All right, so have you ever noticed that when we try to understand why someone's acting out, it's kind of like playing detective?
Oh, yeah.
Today's deep dive is going to take us into the world of functional assessment in ABA.
Okay.
It's basically, like we said, figuring out the why behind challenging behaviors.
Right.
And we've got excerpts from an ABA textbook chapter on this.
Uh-huh.
And it uses real-life cases to show how this is done.
That's great because it makes it much easier to understand
Yeah.
with like real world examples.
Exactly. And, it's fascinating how a behavior that just seems so random
Right.
actually has a purpose
Totally.
for that individual.
Yeah. Like think about a toddler throwing a tantrum. There's a reason.
Yeah.
And it's our job to kind of figure that out.
Exactly. Like the textbook starts with a case study about Jacob.
Okay.
He's a 2-year-old at daycare.
All right.
And he's headbanging,
Oh.
whining,
Oh.
throwing toys.
So he's doing like the
The whole 9 yards.
whole 9 yards. Yeah.
But instead of just labeling him as like a difficult kid,
Right.
we have to ask what's happening right before he acts out.
What's that antecedent? What's going on in the environment
Right.
that's triggering that behavior?
Yeah. And it turned out that the trigger was other kids playing with his toys.
Oh, so,
So get this.
it sounds like attention seeking.
Well, so when he acted out,
Yeah.
they gave him the toys back.
Oh,
Talk about accidental reinforcement.
great. So they were trying to stop the behavior.
Right.
But they actually ended up reinforcing it.
He just made it
Wow.
worse.
That's a great example of how we can sometimes make things worse.
Yes. And so it's like we're accidentally training kids to misbehave sometimes.
Exactly.
And the textbook calls this the 3-term contingency.
Okay.
What happens before the behavior itself and the consequence that follows.
Right. The ABC's
Yeah.
antecedent behavior consequence.
Exactly. And so in Jacob's case,
Yeah.
the consequence of getting his toys back
Mm-hmm.
actually made the tantrums more likely to happen again.
Right. Because he got what he wanted.
Exactly.
So the behavior was reinforced.
And this highlights the danger of unintentional reinforcement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's something we have to be really careful about.
Yeah. Sometimes our immediate reaction to a challenging behavior
Right.
can actually make the problem worse in the long run.
Totally.
So it's not just about reacting.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the function
Right. So why?
of the behavior.
Yes.
Let's move on to another case.
Okay.
3-year-old Anna.
All right.
She's also known for her epic meltdowns.
Uh-oh.
Hitting, kicking, screaming.
Oh, my goodness.
You name it.
Wow.
She does it.
Okay.
Now,
Yeah.
this is where things get a little bit tricky.
Okay.
Because sometimes what looks like attention-seeking behavior
Mm-hmm.
is actually about escaping something unpleasant.
Oh, interesting.
So for Anna, it wasn't about getting attention. It was
Okay.
about getting out of something. Her trigger was actually her mom not paying attention to her.
Wow.
And the tantrum stopped
Yeah.
when mom finally gave her attention.
So she wanted to escape that lack of attention.
Yes, exactly.
Interesting.
So both kids were acting out,
Yeah.
but for completely different reasons.
Right. So it's not always what it seems on the surface.
Exactly.
We have to dig deeper.
Jacob wanted something.
Uh-huh.
Anna wanted to avoid something.
Yeah.
And this leads us to the 4 functions of problem behavior,
Okay.
which are key to understanding why these behaviors keep happening.
Right.
We've already touched on 2 of them.
Okay.
Getting something like Jacob with his toys
Mm-hmm.
and escaping something like Anna in playtime.
Right.
The textbook also mentions 2 more functions where the reward isn't social,
All right.
but it comes from the behavior itself.
Oh, that's interesting.
Okay, so this is where I might need you to break it down for me
Sure.
a little bit.
Yeah.
Um,
So, think about a kid who loves spinning. They're spinning not to get attention from anyone,
right.
but because that spinning sensation itself is rewarding to them.
Okay.
That's called automatic positive reinforcement.
Gotcha.
The behavior itself feels good.
So it's like they're getting internal good vibes.
Yes, exact.
Not external rewards.
Yeah, they're not looking for someone to say good job or give them something.
Gotcha.
They just like the way it feels.
Okay.
And then there's automatic negative reinforcement,
Okay.
where the behavior relieves something unpleasant,
Uh-huh.
but internally it's like scratching an itch.
Right.
You do it because it feels good to relieve that itch,
Right.
not for someone else to see you doing it or to get a reaction out of anybody.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've got 4 possible reasons why challenging behavior persists.
Right.
Getting attention, escaping something.
Uh-huh.
Internal good vibes
Yep.
or internal relief,
Exactly.
But how do we actually figure out
Yeah, that's the question.
which one is driving the behavior?
That's right.
I mean, we can't exactly ask a toddler.
Right. Especially a toddler who's in the middle of a tantrum.
Exactly. What's the function of your tantrum
How
today?
are you trying to get out of this?
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's where those functional assessment methods come in.
Okay.
And the textbook talks about 3 main approaches.
Okay.
Indirect methods,
Uh-huh.
direct observation, and experimental methods, which are also known as functional analysis.
Okay, so let's unpack these, starting with the indirect methods.
All right.
It sounds like we're gathering information from people
Yes.
who know the individual well.
Exactly. It's like,
Yeah.
think interviews and questionnaires,
Okay.
talking to parents, teachers, caregivers,
Uh-huh.
anyone who regularly interacts with the individual
Okay.
to get their perspective.
So this helps us get a sense of what might be going on.
Right. It gives us some background information,
Okay.
some initial hypotheses.
But remember, it relies on memory.
Yes, and memory can be a little fuzzy sometimes.
All right, so it's a good starting point,
Uh-huh.
but we need more concrete evidence.
Exactly. We need to go beyond just what people tell us
Okay.
and actually observe what's happening.
Okay, so that's where direct observation comes in.
Yes.
This is like being a fly on the wall.
Right.
Watching what happens before, during, and after the behavior.
Exactly.
We're looking for patterns,
Yeah.
triggers,
Uh-huh.
and consequences.
Yes.
To see if we can spot the 3-term contingency in action.
Right. We're trying to see that ABC in real time.
Okay, so we're like behavior detectives gathering clues.
I like that analogy.
And then we have the experimental methods,
Yes.
functional analysis.
Our gold standard.
Is that when we actually test out our theories?
We're manipulating the environment in a very controlled way
Okay.
to see what triggers the behavior.
Okay.
For example, if we think attention is the reinforcer,
Uh-huh.
we might purposely give attention after the behavior occurs
Okay.
and see if it happens more often.
That makes sense, but it sounds like it could be pretty tricky to pull off in real life.
It definitely can be.
Yeah.
It requires expertise,
Uh-huh.
careful planning,
Right.
and you have to be very ethically mindful,
Right.
especially with more severe behaviors.
Okay, so we've got our detective toolkit.
Yes.
But like any good mystery,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the cases aren't so straightforward.
Right. Not all cases are clear-cut.
The textbook gives an example of Clyde,
Okay.
a young man with Down syndrome
All right.
who would drop to the floor
Oh.
and refuse to work.
Wow.
Now, was it to get attention from his job coach or to escape the task?
Right. That's the
A
question.
functional analysis helps sort that out.
And that's why functional analysis is so valuable,
Yeah.
because it can give us those answers.
And this is where understanding those 4 functions is so crucial.
Absolutely.
It helps us generate hypotheses
Yes.
about what might be going on
Uh-huh.
and then test those hypotheses systematically.
Right. It gives us a framework.
Okay, so functional assessment is about figuring out the why.
Exactly.
But what I'm really curious about is what happens after we figured out the why?
Yeah, that's a great question.
So like knowing the function is great,
Right.
but how does it actually help us change the behavior?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And that's where functional assessment gets really practical.
Okay.
Because once we know the why,
Uh-huh.
we can tailor our interventions
Okay.
to address that specific function.
So it's not about finding like a one-size-fits-all solution.
Exactly. It's not a cookie-cutter approach.
Okay.
Imagine trying to open a combination lock
Uh-huh.
with the wrong numbers.
Right.
It's not going to work.
Yeah.
Same goes for behavior change.
Okay.
We need the right combination
Yeah.
of strategies
Yeah.
that match the function of that behavior.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Can you give an example of how knowing the function would actually change the way we respond to a behavior?
Absolutely. Let's go back to Jacob and his toy-related tantrums. If we didn't understand the function, we might try a bunch of things that wouldn't work.
Okay.
Like punishing him for the tantrum
Right.
or trying to reason with him.
Right.
But because we know he's tantruming to get his toys back,
Uh-huh.
we can change the consequence.
Oh.
Instead of giving him the toys when he acts out,
Right.
we can teach him a more appropriate way to ask for a turn.
Okay, so we're changing the consequence
Exactly.
to change the behavior.
Yep, we're changing the environment.
Gotcha.
Change the behavior.
And for Anna, who is trying to escape playtime with her tantrums,
Right.
we wouldn't want to give her attention during the tantrum.
Exactly, because then we'd be reinforcing that.
Right, because that's exactly what she's trying to get.
Yeah.
Instead, we might give her lots of attention when she's playing nicely.
Right.
So she learns that good behavior,
Exactly.
gets her what she wants.
We want to reinforce that positive behavior.
Yeah, it's like we're teaching them a new language for getting their needs met.
I love that analogy.
And that's what's so empowering about functional assessment.
Yes.
It gives us a roadmap for not only understanding behavior, but also creating positive change.
Absolutely. It gives us a plan.
Yeah. I'm starting to see the big picture here.
Yeah.
But I imagine it's not always easy to put these concepts into practice.
Right.
What are some of the challenges that you see people running into?
Well, first off, it takes time
Okay.
to do a proper functional assessment. We're talking about gathering information, observing behavior, sometimes even running those experimental manipulations.
Right.
It's not a quick fix.
Right.
And let's be real, most of us are busy.
Yeah.
Parents, teachers, therapists. We don't always have tons of time to dedicate to this.
Time is definitely a valuable commodity.
Absolutely.
Are there any other hurdles that people might face?
Sometimes it can be tough to get everyone on the same page.
Okay.
You might have a parent who's convinced their child is just being manipulative, or a teacher who's not bought into the whole ABA approach.
Right. So it's not just about understanding the concepts ourselves.
Right.
But it's also about helping others understand them.
Exactly. And that can involve a lot of education and collaboration.
Yeah.
It's about explaining the why behind what we're doing.
Yeah.
And showing how it can lead to those real lasting improvements.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So for someone who's listening to this and thinking, okay, this all sounds great, but where do I even start?
Yeah.
What would you recommend?
I'd say start small.
Okay.
Pick one behavior that you're really struggling with and try to apply these concepts.
Okay.
Start by just observing
Okay.
what's happening before the behavior.
Right.
What happens after.
Uh-huh.
Can you start to see any patterns?
So it's about being a behavior detective even in our own lives.
Exactly, I like that.
And don't be afraid to experiment a bit.
Okay.
Try changing some consequences and see what happens.
Right.
Remember, functional assessment is a process, not a one-time event.
Okay.
It's ongoing, and it's okay to make mistakes along the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, those mistakes can be valuable learning opportunities.
Right.
The key is to be flexible, be curious, and most importantly, be patient.
This has been so helpful.
Oh, good.
I feel like I have a whole new toolkit
Awesome.
for understanding and addressing challenging behaviors.
Great.
And I bet our listeners feeling the same way.
Me too.
Speaking of which, the textbook doesn't really dive into this.
Okay.
But I'm curious, what if a behavior has more than one function?
Oh, yeah?
Like, could a kid be throwing a tantrum to both get attention and escape a chore?
Absolutely.
Really?
It happens more often than you might think. It's like those optical illusions where you can see two different images.
Right.
Depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
Behavior can be like that too.
Okay.
Serving multiple purposes.
At the same time.
At the same time.
Wow. So how do we even begin to unravel that?
Right.
It seems like it would make things a lot more complicated.
It definitely adds another layer of complexity.
Okay.
Think about it like this.
We're
trying to solve a puzzle,
Okay.
but some of the pieces are missing.
Oh.
We might need to use a combination of strategies
Right.
to address all those functions,
Okay.
or we might need to prioritize
Okay.
which function we target first.
So instead of a simple combination lock, it's more like those puzzles
Yeah.
with a bunch of levers and gears
Right.
that all have to be in just the right position
Exactly.
for it to open.
That's a fantastic analogy.
It really highlights why functional assessment
Yeah.
isn't a one-and-done kind of thing.
Totally.
It's an ongoing process
Right.
of observation, data collection, and tweaking our approach.
Based on what we're seeing.
Yeah.
It's dynamic.
It's like we're constantly adjusting our dance steps
Exactly.
based on our partner's lead.
We need to be flexible and adaptable
Right.
because behavior is dynamic. It changes over time.
Yeah.
What worked yesterday might not work today, and that's okay.
Right.
The key is to keep observing,
Okay.
keep learning, and keep refining our approach.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive.
I agree.
I feel like I have a whole new appreciation for the complexity of behavior and how functional assessment can help us make sense of it all.
Me too.
And I hope our listener is walking away
Yes.
with some practical takeaways,
I hope so.
like how to be a behavior detective in their own lives,
Right.
how to think about function, and how to tailor their responses
To match that function.
to match that function exactly.
Yeah.
And to remember that it's a journey, not a destination.
Absolutely.
There's always more to learn
Always.
when it comes to understanding behavior.
It's a fascinating field.
It really is. So the next time you encounter a challenging behavior,
Okay.
remember to channel your inner detective.
Yes.
Ask what's the function.
Exact.
You might be surprised at what you uncover.
You might learn something new.
Until next time,
Yeah.
happy deep diving.